our guests. Now I want to introduce next session, how agents build better career for writers, and the moderator of the event, Edward Nawotka, international and book-selling editor at Publishers Weekly from United States of America, and the speakers of the event, Arevik Ashkharoyan, founder and literary agent at Ari Literary and Talent Agency from Armenia, Merve Diler, Alem Literary Agency from Turkey, and Manol Peykov, publisher and translator at Janet 45 Publishing House. So let's start. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm glad that I got you right after lunch. My name is Edward Nawotka, and I'm the international editor at Publishers Weekly. We're the magazine that covers the international book business in the United States. If you're not familiar, you can find us online at publishersweekly.com. It's a 150-year-old magazine. We're celebrating our 150th anniversary this year, which we're very proud of. In fact, it's this week, so it's very surprising. Our magazine is best known for publishing book reviews, and we are essentially the Bible for the book business. We do close to 10,000 book reviews a year, so we really cover everything. And it's my pleasure to bring together this panel and to come to Georgia for the first time. We're going to talk about agenting and the new profession, essentially. Now, it's not a new profession in some contexts, but in this part of the world, it's a relatively nascent profession, one that's being born out of necessity as the industry becomes more international and more professional in its engagement with the international community. And I'm also going to make the point right up front, this panel is here for you, so we're not going to sit and lecture. I think we're going to try to start a conversation a little bit with ourselves, and then we're going to we want you to come interact, talk, because really the questions are for you to have answered. So please feel free to interrupt, raise a hand, make it known, and we'll get you a microphone. I'd rather that we do that than sit here for a solid hour just talking at you, if that's okay. And don't be shy. I know sometimes it feels like school and you can't raise a hand, but please do. This is what it's for. So, from my left, I'm going to let each individual introduce themselves. They're going to tell you a little bit about their work and do a little show and tell with some of the books that they worked on. So please.
Hello again. So I am Arevik Ashkharoyan from Armenia, from Ari Literary and Talent Agency. I started to work as an agent around more than 10 years ago out of necessity. By the way, when Armenia was the UNESCO book, Yerevan was the UNESCO book capital, and we were trying to kind of arrange the infrastructures within the publishing industry. So I started to be a literary agent. And it's over 12 years, which I totally love. It's a very difficult job, especially for countries like Armenia with, languages, difficult languages, which are, I don't like calling them small, but languages spoken by kind of less quantity of people. To tell my story, I brought you these two books. I mean, one book this was actually the first translation that we did of a writer into English. And this is the writer's last book, which last year got a European Prize for Literature. This is Aram Bachan. Why I wanted to show you especially this one, because I have around maybe 15 translations by now. But we started working with this writer, with Aram, when he only had one book. And it was one of the first writers that I read, and that's how I decided to kind of, yes, this is worth doing, worth being a literary agent. So we walked together throughout 4 books, and finally we got here to the European Prize of Literature, which might not be a huge thing for the world, but for our region, it is actually a great success. We have been facing multiple difficulties which were spoken from this stage this morning about lack of translators, about necessity to find and train translators from Armenian into other languages. We have faced difficulties on, finding interest among foreign publishers in an unknown culture, unknown literature. So little by little, overcoming these difficulties, we are where we are. I am personally happy with the results, and there is still a long way to go. And we have wonderful friends around the world, co-agents in several countries who help us do our job. And I should say this, for me, this is kind of a dream job. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Merve Diler from Kalem Agency, which is based in Istanbul, Turkey. I work as sub-agent there to represent foreign non-fiction titles. I started as an intern in Kalem Agency, and then I was working as junior literary agent for fiction titles, and then I started to represent non-fiction titles. So I kind of stand on every chair in an agency. So Kalem Agency was founded in 2005 by Nermin Mollaoğlu. I believe that you must know about her. And Kalem Agency actually is working both sides. We represent the Turkish authors abroad, and we also have our foreign clients, and we represent their titles in Turkish market. So I would like to show this title to you. This is a title which was written by a female Turkish author, Defne Suman. I love its journey to World English rights, so I will mention a little bit about it, because it's literally about being an agent. Defne Suman was on representation lists, and she was represented by Nermin Mollaoğlu, and when her latest book was published in Turkish, it was The Breakfast Table. Nermin decided to send a newsletter to our foreign clients, and then she got some interest, but not for the UK editions. And then she asked an intern to read all Defne Suman titles and send another newsletter, and then our intern, Diler, decided to highlight another title of Defne Suman. Most of the agents are usually representing their authors' the latest titles, but she decided to highlight another title from the backlists, and she suggested to change the title, actually. It was The Borrowed Time. Its direct translation was The Borrowed Time, but it was not very catchy for the foreign publishers. And then she suggested The Silence of Shehrazad. And then we got a huge offer from the head of Zeus. And it was at the beginning of the pandemic. You can imagine how the things were very complicated, but it was a very huge offer for a Turkish author. And I believe that it shows the importance of the details and comparing or considering all the chance to promote the title. It was just a suggestion from an intern, and it goes very well. And I should say that that intern is our newest agent in Kalem Agency now. And I also bring 3 titles too. I will not talk about them that much, no worries. But I would like to show them to you because we are also working as sub-agents, and we are very proud of representing small market language too, unless the other agencies. This is an Armenian title. It was published by Iron2 Publishing, and I'm very glad to be a part of this translation process, licensing process. And the other one is a Georgian title, and it was published by Daedalus Publishing, and we just renew its Turkish rights. So I'm very glad to see that the Turkish publishers are very interested keeping this title in their list. And the last one, Georgi Gospodinov, The Physics of Sorrow. So it's the Bulgarian title. So I wanted to show these titles to you, and I'm very glad to be here with all dearest colleagues, and especially Arevik, Manol, and in the moderation of dearest Ed. Thank you.
Thank you. And last, Manol.
Thanks, Ed. Oh, sorry. Thanks, Ed. I didn't bring any books because I still have nothing to boast or brag about. The agency we started is just 1 week old. We just inaugurated it before the London Book Fair in last Monday, in fact, so exactly a year old. a week old. It's called Sofia Literary Agency. But let me rewind a little bit because I want to make some more general comments. Because this panel is dedicated to the role of literary agents in this part of the world, I want to make a comment that's a little more, how should I call it, perhaps a little more philosophical. So bear with me a little. Usually from the point of view of Bulgaria, which is on the very outskirts of the European Union, we always turn our eyes on the West, and we always compare ourselves to Western Europe. And essentially the adjectives we're used to when Bulgaria is described is the smallest, the least developed, the poorest in the European Union, etc. And I've always claimed that this is not a good vantage point, because what's special about Bulgaria is that it's a cornerstone country between East and West. Bulgarians are people of Oriental tastes in terms of almost everything, in terms of cuisine, you know, because the Turkish influence is huge, 500 years of, you know, presence in Bulgaria. Even music, lifestyle. At the same time, when it comes to statehood, the form of government that we prefer, we're decidedly Occidental. So Bulgaria, in a sense, is a very good example of a country that, you know, that lies on these crossroads, and my hometown of Plovdiv is the best example of that. It's the oldest, allegedly the oldest living city in Europe, and the 5th or 6th oldest in the world. And the reason why in this place, in the middle of the Thracian Valley, there have always been people living there, you know, uninterruptedly for more than 5,000 years, way before Rome. I mean, it's twice older than Rome or Athens. The reason is because it's a crossroads. And this, to me, I've always thought that this should be seen as an advantage. So the point that we have, the point of view, with eyes always turned to the West, they result in this strange inferiority complex, which in a sense, this morning, when I listened to everybody's presentation, I felt a little bit of it in every country that presented their markets. And what was really strange for me was that come to compare Bulgaria to Georgia, Armenia, Romania even, and pre-war Ukraine, because right now the situation is obviously beyond any comparison. Bulgaria, in a sense, is the most vibrant and the most developed book market. We have more publishers than even the Ukraine. We have about 1,500 publishers. We publish about 10,000 new titles every year, which is 10 times more than what they publish in Georgia. We have about 300 plus, maybe already 400 bookstores in the country, which is more than they have in Romania, which is 3 times as big as Bulgaria. So this is a very refreshing point of view on the world from the point of view of a Bulgarian like me, who is used to thinking of himself as a small country, which is always trying to catch up with the rest of the world, right? Because obviously that point of view is completely incorrect in the context of the situation
though you are sitting next
here.
to somebody from Turkey, which
Sorry?
though you are sitting next to somebody from Turkey who is
Well,
coming from a
Turkey.
significantly exactly. I'm just pointing out that, you know,
No,
contextually,
for a good reason. But
how does this apply to agenting? If we could progress to the agenting, please.
If yeah, that essentially
mind,
that's where I was going.
Yeah.
Well, in Bulgaria there are no agencies to speak of, and there have been attempts, few and far between, of people trying to, you know, to represent authors, but always unsuccessful and always very patchy for one or two authors, or part of something bigger, or part of an attempt that never came to fruition. So for the last 10 years, I've been telling myself that I need to start something. And, you know, actually, this was what I wanted to say in the context of, you know, this long introduction. The good thing about our markets, excluding Turkey, which is huge, but our small, tiny, little markets, is that one person or one personal effort can leave an imprint, a serious imprint on the market. It can really change things. To me, my mother has been an example of that, because in the 90s, she was the only person in Bulgaria publishing Bulgarian literature. Nobody wanted to publish Bulgarian literature. For 10, 12, almost 15 years, she was the only one. So essentially right now, even though in the 2000s, everybody suddenly, because it became popular, they started selling, markets changed, attitudes changed, they became more mature. Everybody wanted Bulgarian authors, but all the authors were with us. And even now, 20 years later, a good 70-75% of the strong literary names from the last 3 generations are with us. So I have this example of my mother doing something which was trailblazing years ago, and naturally to me, it sounds like the most logical step that I should try to do something that nobody wants to do right now, which is to represent Bulgarian authors abroad. And I'm absolutely convinced that in 10 years, in due course, everybody will want to do that. I really hope that this will be the case. Back to you.
Well, it's interesting because the role of agent is twofold. Both you develop agents at home, or not agents, you develop authors at home, and you're working with authors at home to sell them to your publishers to develop their titles. And then you're also the agencies will be selling rights outside of the country. So in a sense, the agency has two different roles, and you've been doing both of these roles in your capacity.
Yes, actually, but it's more complicated for us in Armenia because publishers are used to working directly with writers, and it has been very difficult to get them used to, you know, approaching us for writers' rights and then negotiating with them, offering them what is your
argument that it's, so again, more to this panel, what's the argument? What benefit, are you just taking money from the author?
No. Of course we take the money from the author and not the publisher in this case.
Yes.
But there is an obvious benefit. Writers are not able to sell themselves, kind of, let's say these words, you know, they might not sound very nice, but writers are only willing to get published, and they are usually agree to any condition they are offered, which is totally wrong, both for them, for the business, for the publishers. So the actual benefit is that we negotiate better conditions for these writers. That's the first point, the most important one, and then we make writers believe in their own strength, in their own impact. I mean, we say, don't hurry with publishing, let's get you a better option, first of all. So that's mainly what we do with writers in the local markets. And then we also, of course, in the local market, there is more to do for an agent, which is Kalem doing very well, bringing in translations. It was also very new for the Armenian market. Still, it's difficult to do. But for now, for the past 4 years, we have around 10 publishers who approach us to negotiate for them. But now, for the past 2 years, they are also ready to hear offers from us. So we are the ones who are usually traveling to book fairs. We see the trends, we see new titles, we have contacts with publishers. So we offer them interesting titles, not only doing negotiations for them. And this is also quite new for our market.
It's interesting because, as Manol pointed out, that an individual can make a huge difference. And I'm thinking of a comment that was made earlier today about how nobody was interested in Turkish literature until Pamuk won the Nobel. And you might make the same argument for Bulgarian literature, and Kostova, though was American when she started the foundation. Nino Khatishvili, forgive my pronunciation, he's done a huge amount for presence of Georgian literature. much like Kalem and Nermin, the founder of Kalem, has really done a lot for Turkish literature. And I mean, would you agree that that's had a big, has had a big impact internationally on Turkish literature, your agency's role as interlocutors? Because there was also, internationally, you know, there was quite a bit of suspicion of the Turkish government because of the way Pamuk had been treated at that time, too.
Yeah, we have to admit that Nobel is affected always the success of the international size of our local titles. But I believe that we also have to talk about the other dynamics which helps us promoting our titles, because it was a very important term. Yeah, I was very young at that time, but as I heard from Nermin and the others, at the beginning of the 2000s, there was an economic crisis in Turkey, and just after that, there was great improvements in every industry, actually, and the publishing has also affected by these improvements. And the publishers were very excited about promoting their titles, and they went to the fairs, etc. But I always say that leave it to the professionals, because I mean that. Until 2003, there were no official copyright department in any publishing houses in Turkey, which is, yeah, I don't believe that, because I believe that the publishing professionals seems that like it's just paperwork, you know, sending offers and then chasing the agreements, etc. But then they decided to promote their titles abroad, which was not very successful at all. But there was an increasing interest to promoting our local titles abroad. And then just after a couple of years, after the Pamuk won the Nobel Prize, Turkey was the guest of honor in Frankfurt Book Fair in 2008. It was very great for all of us, because all the foreign clients had the opportunity to meet Turkish publishers and titles as well. And as I mentioned before, Kalem Agency just founded in 2005, and these are very close dates. And I really believe that, actually we as the agency believe that it's demand on the change of the general opinion, because I will give some numbers to you which impressive me extremely. From the foundation of Republic of Turkey to the 2000s, at the beginning of 2000s, just 300 titles has been licensed to foreign, the foreign languages. And then we as Kalem Agency, in 17 years, we licensed over 3,000 titles. Yeah, so it's very impressive. It's not just the Kalem Agency's success, but it's about the changing something on the general opinion, because as Arevik mentioned, most of the Turkish professionals didn't believe that the Turkish titles cannot be read in the foreign countries, etc. We were thinking that the foreign publishers just are interested in maybe, politic exile writers like Nazım Hikmet, etc. But then they saw the potential with the Nobel Prize and then the guest of honor in Frankfurt Book Fair. And then there are new publishing houses, there are new literary agencies like Kalem Agency. And then here we are. Yeah, I believe that we have to see the whole picture, but of course they were all beneficial for.
Certainly these, because when you cite somebody like Pamuk, it's such an outlier, it's such an extraordinary example, it almost doesn't apply to the day-to-day work of publishing. And Manol, one of the things that you're implying, I think, when you were talking is that there's more book trading, and this has come up actually several times already today, there's more rights trading and translation that needs to happen amongst the countries just in this region, amongst the panelists here at the conference. Would you agree? And is that an opportunity?
Absolutely, Ed. I would agree. And I think that the one thing I've learned in my about 15 years of experience, it's not too many years, but it's not too few either. I think in 15 years of work, you learn the basics of a trade. So one thing I've learned is that publishing and buying rights is it's a very personal affair. You buy from people that you like, people whose tastes are like yours, and it's very much beside the point whether they come from Israel, Georgia, Iceland, Greenland, or I don't know, Ghana. It's about personal contact, and that's why such conferences to me are exceedingly important, because it gives you the opportunity to peek into worlds that otherwise are completely unknown to you. At the same time, let's take Georgia, for instance. You know, Georgians have no idea what people in Bulgaria know about Georgia and how we feel about Georgia, right? The only way for them to learn is if they see me here in person, and I tell them that I know not only about the Georgian Olympic wrestlers and weightlifters who are great, an embodiment of the great male spirit of the Georgian, you know, Caucasian man, but also the polyphonic singing, which is absolutely enchanting and one of the most beautiful things in the world. So to me, Georgia in my mind was always something very poetic, something very beautiful, something very abstract, which I wanted to see, to come and see in person. Now that I've seen it, I've confirmed it. It is just like I thought. So the first thing I would want to do when I come back, one of the first things, would be to definitely publish and translate the Georgian author. So, once again, back to my point about this inferiority complex that we have as small nations. Who the hell, even Turkey, the biggest country among us, I mean, the population of Turkey is just about the same as everybody else put together, right? They thought of themselves up until 17 years ago as an inferior literary culture of sorts. Who the hell would want to listen to our stories? I think most of us have similar thoughts in our minds, even when we don't want to admit them. And this is not the case, I assure you. It's just a case of persistence, presence on the market, knowing the tricks of the trade, knowing who to approach, and a very personal one-on-one approach, be it with agents from England, Germany, France, you name it, or the smaller countries. But it requires, it's a long-term affair.
Let me follow up with something you said, though, that, and I also have this same romantic. I think what you were describing about Georgia was romance. Is this poetic, and it is romantic. But the question is okay. So as agents, you serve as almost de facto ambassadors, and as individuals, like you said, I can name individuals who've been influential for every story I've ever written about a given country, whether that's Iceland, the Ukraine, South Africa. That's usually comes down to one individual that I had a personal relationship with. Do you, when you go back to translate that book or sell that book or represent that country, say you want to do you take the cliched idea, your idea of Georgia, and try to sell that to Bulgaria? Or do you take the Georgian idea of Georgia and sell that to Bulgaria? Because I'm going to guess that they're quite different. And I know Armenia has this issue. Turkey definitely has this issue. So how do you deal with that? Because I often advise people, start with the cliche and then do variations. People understand the cliche, but then you undermine it with the literature. But I don't know if this is maybe getting too philosophical or not, but how do you feel about that?
No, not at all. I am not taking cliches, and I don't think that literature and reader needs somebody in the middle. I think the best way to represent a book is through its story. And that's it. No cliches, not for me at least. I do know what publishers expect from me when they meet me at book fairs. When I have a pre-arranged meeting, I do know in my mind what they expect, but then they come and they don't see it. So this is another way to show that cliches don't work, even if these are wonderful cliches. But well, Georgian literature is not about those romantic things only, as far as I have read, and I know it's much more than that.
Of course.
The same about Armenian literature. I mean, they always expect something really national from us, something connected with our history. But that's not what at least I as an agent, present to them, and that's not how I represent them. A story is the best way to talk to people. As we said here, the dialogue is very important, and I absolutely agree with Manol about how personal this business is. And it's so important to have the connection with the publisher, and if the connection is there, everything works well. Maybe not this year, but it will eventually work. So no cliches for me.
I am also not the fan of the cliches, and I'm very sick of seeing some mosques on the cover of the Turkish titles, international editions. You know, even though it's not even close to mosques or religions, etc., we always have to see, have to put a mosque on the cover. You know, we actually represent many authors in our presentation list, over 100 authors, and they are politically, you know, they are very different politically, ideologically, etc. So they cannot, our titles cannot include the cliches, at least some of them.
You slightly misunderstood me. What I meant is that these cliches, when they're positive, of course, they help to break the ice. But actually, the actual interaction happens way beyond these cliches, because a person, something going on.
Yeah, with the translation. The mic was off.
Okay. Because what happens is that once you meet a person, he or she is just that person for you, and he or she is unique in the universe. So it's very much beside the point whether they are Georgian, Armenian, Azeri, Bulgarian, Croatian, you name it. The good thing, though, is that sometimes if the literary voice of that person is very strong, and I can give numerous examples of that, because I've made, over the last 13 years, I've made about 42 or 3 book tours with international authors around Bulgaria. They could change your perception of an entire parts of the world, an entire country. They could become a symbol of a country of which you have a completely different perception. To me, Edgar Keret, who is from Israel, has been like that. You know, before him, Israel to me was a cliche, right? And a cliche that we all know. You know, they suppress the Palestinians, they do this, they do that, they're smart, but, you know, there's always a but. When you see Edgar Keret, there's never a but. He is the kindest person in the world. He's one of the most inventive people in the world. He's one of the best friends in real life. You know, I've invited him to Bulgaria 5 times. So to me now, he's not the only Israeli author I've invited to Bulgaria, but to me, he symbolizes Israel. So to me, Israel now has a different poetic feel, which Georgia had to begin with, even before I've known a Georgian author. So I was saying, you know, they have an advantage to start a relationship. With Israel, it wasn't like that, but despite that fact, you know, the presence of somebody like Edgar Keret, you know, overtook that, and the voice of a single person, you know, has been able to stand above the cliches, the political cliches of a country that is on the news all the time. So this is a great opportunity, and this is the soft power of culture and of literature, and that's why it's so important to distribute literature around the world, because those individual voices, like Nermin just sat next to me, and I, with much surprise, I noticed that one of the books is by Georgi Gospodinov. It's an author that, you know, has been with Janet 45 since 1997. And for more than 15 years, not 15, maybe about 12, his books were not selling. We were selling actually below cost. in order to push his name because he believes in him. And at one point, he made a breakthrough, and she just told me that it's one of her favorite books. So see, that's how the world goes, but it requires this continued effort. And yeah, that's part of what we do. That's what publishing is all about.
Oh, it's interesting you bring up the whole soft power idea, because also sometimes a cliche can be somewhat misleading. If you go to the Korean government will tell you the popularity of Haruki Murakami in Korea has actually helped ease tensions between Japan and Korean literary institutions, though the Japanese will tell you that Haruki Murakami is nothing like the majority of Japanese writing. This is a very westernized, very American in many ways type of writing. Well, we've gotten a little off track. We've gotten more cultural, but let's talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of the business side of it. In each of the markets that you're working in, because agenting is, again, developing and it's establishing a stronger and stronger role, how does that work financially with the publishers? Are they willing to negotiate? Are they coming? Because you're doing a lot of, part of the role of agenting is also doing a lot of, at least certainly in the U.S., is doing a lot of the work publishers would have originally done themselves. Editing, mothering, parenting, if you will, this kind of psychological coddling that authors need to bring their books to birth, if you will.
First of all, no, it doesn't support financially at all. I mean, agenting in Armenia no way can support you in any of your life activities, you know. So we do a lot more, of course, which supports our work as agents, but and which brings us money. We also have our Literature Foundation, which implements projects in the field of publishing, not publishing, but mostly literary, translation projects. We have projects promoting women writers. It's called Zabel International Women Writers Forum. We have a project called Write in Armenia, which is an international writing camp for young writers. So that's how I solved the problem for myself. We created this organization which implements projects which bring us money and which support the field for ourselves. So we find writers here, we bring them into the condition of being published, we find translators and we work with them, we train them and later use as, you know, our translators. So not in Armenia at least, we cannot support ourselves as literary agents only. We have to do much more, and I do believe in many countries that should be the same, the countries present here. And yes, about parenting, about local markets, it's still difficult for local publishers to pay huge amounts for our writers, but yes, we work with them. We do a lot of a part of their job sometimes. We work with writers, we, you know, mother them very often. But in Armenia's case, it's more about international market rather than local. So it's more about trying to represent the writers internationally. The writer I talked about, Aram Pachan, is now translated into around 8 or 9th language is coming soon, which is not much for 10 years, but it has been a huge work, and communication between writer and agent is very important. The, you know, friendly relations, they should believe in your job. That's very, very important, and you know, that's the result. The result is as many languages published as possible.
It's also worth pointing out, though, that this is not unique, because there are very large countries that have relatively underdeveloped agenting, or India is one country where agenting is not as developed a profession, and France only really developed agents in the last 5 to 10 years, and very often they're not just exclusively French agents, but they represent global authors rather than just French authors, because the French publishers still all but refuse to work with agents by and large, out of patrimony and one might say arrogance even. Column has a lot of activities as well, and how does the market respond to the demands of what you're asking on behalf of Because also, one of the benefits of selling subrights is that is money that the publisher did not make at home, but they can make abroad. And that's one of the strong arguments for working with subagents, too, to sell, for example, your particular role.
First of all, I would like to talk about the support which we can take. We don't take any support as the agency directly, but we have an important translation grant program, which is, given by the Ministry of Culture, TEDA. I believe that most of our titles, international editions, was helped from this translation grant program. So I really care about the governments do that because it's very helpful for your working, promoting your titles in international sales. And collaboration with the publishers, they were not very keen about doing that, but as I mentioned earlier, they try to do it by themselves, and it's not actually a very easy thing to do because as an agent you always have other connections, or you go to so much more fairs, etc. So they had to learn to trust you as an agent. So I believe that it really affected, but it's actually some publishing houses giving all their titles to one agency sometimes, that much trust. But I don't think that it's a very best option if the publishers did that. But we have great collaboration, and it's getting so much better.
And since this has been a subject, I'm going to bring this up now, but we don't have to discuss it, but I just want to put this out there. When I was in London, one of the conversations I had after somebody had several drinks, they were a managing director of a very large international agency who told me that the international publishing community subrights agents were still selling books to Russian publishers. So sometimes there can be, this is this sort of second-hand, experience where, and in this case, you have some of the larger best-selling authors and large best-selling authors from major publishers who are using their subagents to get around this boycott that's been called against Russian publishers. And I'm just going to put that out there because if anybody can confirm this to me, because I don't want to reveal my source, I'd be happy to chase this as a story. It's quite an interesting subject. On that note, let's open up the floor since just to stir the pot a little bit. But it would be great to hear from somebody in the audience. Have you had a good, a bad, an indifferent experience working with an agent or a sub-agent, or something that you feel that you'd like to express? Any questions? Yes. Oh, 1 second. We'll just bring you the mic.
Shahbaz from Azerbaijan. How do you work with a writer? I think it is really hard work to find common language.
Yes, go for it. And then Manol, maybe perhaps.
Actually, we are lucky about our representation lists, but I believe that it's not very hard because you have to decide the author who you would like to work with at the very first stage. And if you cannot like the author as personality, but you can see the value of that author's titles in the literature value. But I believe that at least we agency don't prefer to work with the authors who doesn't trust the agents or will not listen to the agents' suggestions. I don't mean that the authors do everything what the agents say, but I believe that it's a very important thing to communicate in the best way. It has to be mutual. So if you cannot do that, I believe that it's not to work with together.
It's interesting because one of the dilemmas that agents have is they will spend a lot of energy developing an author until they get them to the point where they're a success, and then another agent will come and steal them, who is another more successful agent will come and take them, much like publishers will do. Yes. So you also have, sometimes, you're not rewarded for your good work. Not that way.
მოგესალმებით. მე გახლავართ მარინა ცხადაია, გამომცემლობა პეგასის. მარინა ცხადაია, გამომცემლობა პეგასის ხელმძღვანელი. ჩემი გამომცემლობა არ არის დიდი და მაქვს გამოცდილებაზე, რა თქმა უნდა, ვერ ვილაპარაკე, პირიქით შეკითხვა მაქვს, თქვენ გამჭირდება კონსულტაცია. საქართველოში ჩემთვის რამდენადაც ცნობილია ლიტერატურული აგენტის და ლიტერატურული სააგენტოს როლი ჯერჯერობით ძალიან მცირეა. ალბათ ეხლა ვიწყებთ ამ ხრივ მუშაობას და ამ ფუნქციის აღება გვიწევს გამომცემლებს. ამიტომ მაინტერესებს ძალიან გვიჭირს სხვათა შორის როგორც თარგმანის მოპოვება უცხოენიდან, ასევე ჩვენი ქართველი ავტორების ნაწარმოებების თარგმნა უცხო ენაზე. გასაგებია, ძალიან დიდი მნიშვნელობა აქვს პირად კონტაქტებს, თქვათ საერთაშორისო კონფერენციებზე, სიარულზე, საერთაშორისო წიგნის ბაზრობებზე, მაგრამ გარდა ამისა, თუ არსებობს რაიმე ხერხი, რომ აი კომუნიკაცია გაგვიადვილდეს, მცირე ზომის გამომცემლებს ამ შემდგომი თარგმანების განვითარებისათვის.
First of all, it's normal that you might not have many agents in a country. In many even developed countries, publishers do the same. I mean, it's not necessary to have an agent or many agents. Publishers can do the same, can travel to book fairs and sell the rights. It's like Ed mentioned, France, they do it by themselves mostly, and they have only a few agents, which is new, working in that. But, the work is really difficult, and every agent, every publisher figures out for themselves how they proceed. How do they see this or that writer translated into this or that language? I mean, it needs some strategic thinking to see if this content will be interesting to the countries that you aim to translate. But of course, that's a very difficult thing to do, and as Merve mentioned, translation support is very important, and personal relation to the authors is very important. So, I mean, yeah, any publisher can do it. It's not necessary to work with an agent. It's just very different for the work between agent and writer. It's more personalized. Agents have less writers sometimes, not agencies like Kalem, of course, but like for us, we have few writers and we try to spend equal attention to them. It's not always possible. But and I want to answer the other question as well, how we choose. It's very personal. You choose what you like. Maybe not the person, but the work, or just vice versa. It happened to me when I didn't like the work, but I saw the potential in the writer, and I worked with him for several years until he delivers work for me worth introducing.
დიდი მადლობა. გასაგებია, როდესაც ჩვენ გვინდა თარგმნოთ უცხო ენიდან, ეს გასაგებია, მაგრამ აი როდესაც ჩვენ გვინდა ქართველი ჩვენი ავტორი გავაცნოთ, აი როგორ ჯობია რა გზას უნდა ვეწიოთ, თქვათ ჯობია სააგენტოებს დავუკავშირდეთ, არსებობს ამის პრაქტიკა თუ თქვათ გამომცემლები ვეძებოთ მთელ იმაში, აი ეს საკითხი მაინტერესებს. დიდი მადლობა.
I think we'll ask Kalem, because our gentleman to the far left has only been away. Though his country is 4,000, or his city is 4,000 years old, his agency is 1 week old. So
I'm sorry, but I catch the question.
She was asking for best practice for expanding your contacts to sell rights. Like, what do you feel are some of the best practices, the best ways to do that?
Actually, as Manol said, I would say the personal communication is the best way. I believe that you all see Nermin everywhere, which, she is our founder of Kalem Agency. And we actually trying to see all the fairs and all the conferences, etc., because we know that we have a lot of things to learn about. So I don't know what you should expand.
I think now, because of the way we've become accustomed to communicating over Zoom and digitally, I think if you take a very young employee and you give them this job and you start them on this path, it will begin paying dividends much more rapidly than in the past. So yes, you could spend a lot of money going to Frankfurt. You should at least go, I always say, go to one book fair that you have never been to before every year. And this way, after 5 years, you will know many, many, many people. Sharjah is a great place to start because they tend to invite a wider variety of publishers from countries that are similar in size to Georgia. And I think that if you investigate the Sharjah Book Fair, they also make it very easy to attend that book fair. This would be a perfect introduction to this area. They also do quite a bit of training. So is that a good answer, you think? Yeah?
Perfect.
Fair? Okay. We have, we're going to go with we have oh, thank you. Yes.
მოგესალმებით, ძალიან საინტერესო დიალოგია. მე ასეთი კითხვა მაქვს აგენტებთან. თქვენთვის პრიორიტეტი, მიზანი არის ძირითადად თქვენი ეროვნული, თქვენი ქვეყნის ლიტერატურის გაცნობა, გატანა და კოპირაიტების გაყიდვა საზღვარგარეთ, თუ თქვენი ქვეყნის ბაზრის განვითარებისთვის მნიშვნელოვანია პირიქით უცხო ქვეყნიდან მოძიება და ყიდვა. ანუ რომელს ანიჭებთ უფრო მეტ პრიორიტეტს ზოგადად და რამდენია წილი პროპორციულად წელიწადში დაახლოებით გაყიდულის და პირიქით შესყიდულის.
Maybe this is Manol. Maybe you could start with this, since you're thinking about this.
The only thing I can say is that in Bulgaria, there's a very strong network of agents who represent foreign authors to Bulgaria. Not many of them, but the few that exist are very strong, and some of the foreign agents are serviced through sub-agents that are not in Bulgaria, but in a neighboring country such as Serbia or Romania. So this market is pretty solidly developed, which is not true at all about the other way around. Bulgarian authors practically are not represented outside of Bulgaria. The publishers in Bulgaria, unlike the Georgian publishers, do not do that service. And the very few attempts that we've had in the country to establish representation for Bulgarian authors has been so far futile. So that's why what I'm planning to do with my new agency is exclusively represent Bulgarian authors abroad. And I don't have illusions that this is going to make me money, at least not in the foreseeable future. So I'm thinking long term, really. And I'm thinking, long ago I stopped thinking about what will bring me money. It's about making sense of the world, more or less. It's about the path that you take. And my philosophy is that when you do the right thing, it leads you to something else. And this other thing brings you to a third thing, and the third thing brings you to a fourth thing. And maybe this fourth thing was the really important thing in the whole journey, which you would never have stumbled upon if you hadn't started from that vantage point. So that's my principal perception. If I may add, I was just in London, and I was talking to a very successful agency which was only created 5 years ago. It's the Helsinki Literary Agency. It's just two people that take care of business. And they told me that this year they sold about 150 titles. This is their 5th year. And Urpu, the lady who is Finnish, was explaining to me how disappointed she was the 1st year, the 2nd year, the 3rd year. She says, I kept telling people things, kept talking about authors, nothing happened. So it requires time. It obviously requires time. So now she says, I need a second person just for the paperwork, because the 150 deals I do, this is one deal every 2 days. If I have to do the paperwork, I won't have time to make sales. And when I asked her, but is that enough to pay for your expenses? She said, not nearly. So even 5 years down the road, they've been hugely successful in my eyes. You know, 150 titles is a lot. This is like 10 times more than all of Bulgaria sells in a single year. Regardless of that, they haven't reached the point where it makes pure financial sense. So it's a long journey. And if you start with the idea to make money, probably you're not going to end where you really wanna end. You have to have different ideas, and these ideas have to be about the important things in life. This is at least how I perceive, you know, this art of selling rights. It's not about making money. It's about something much bigger.
There we go. I think we have time for one question, and then we'll close it up with one statement. Yes, ma'am.
Lia Metraveli. მე ვარ საქწიგნი ასეთი ორგანიზაციის გენერალური დირექტორი. ეს ერთადერთი უწყება, სახელმწიფო უწყება საქართველოში 1932 წლიდან არსებობს. მოგეხსენებათ ბიუჯეტი როგორია სახელმწიფოსი და შეზღუდული ჩვენი. მე როგორც მეურნეს მაინტერესებს ჩემ სომეხ და თურქ კოლეგასთან ვიკითხო, რა პროცენტით გვიძვირებს წიგნს, პროდუქტს, რომელიც უნდა მივაწოდოთ მყიდველს, როცა დავიქირავებთ აგენტს. თუ გამოგითვლიათ ეს და თუ იცით. თქვენთან როგორ არის და შემდეგ მე ჩვენ.
Well, we never actually thought of that, working with, you know, with writers of from kind of neighboring countries or other countries, but that's maybe something to think about. I don't know what discounts you mean, because to be clear to everyone, agent is not kind of being paid by the writer directly, but from the deals that we make, we get paid only when a deal is signed and you receive the copyright money for the author and you get your percentage from that amount. So actually that's, you know, an interesting question coming from an organization funded by the government. I don't know what writers do you work with, who are the writers that you work with, because if the writer is published in a publishing house, they should get some representation from their publishers, if I understand correctly. Otherwise, I mean, I can't answer now. It's something to think about. Yes, we will maybe have a couple of words afterwards, if you would like. But I want to answer the previous question very shortly, because it's a very interesting question. So you should buy and sell at the same time as an agent and as a publisher, because when you are buying, when you are bringing international titles into your market, it develops your own local writing as well, because your writers get access to more international literature, and it helps helps them kind of to write better, or at least to know what's going on in the world literature. So it's both as important as selling. Buying is as important as selling. And yes, we first of all develop the local market, because you need to have good writers. Good, I mean, not good, but writers who can be interesting, not only to local readers, but also to international. So it's always work.
დიდი მადლობა. მე სხვაგვარად დავსვი კითხვა თქვენი ქვეყნის მაგალითზე, თურქეთის მაგალითზე, რომელი უფრო პრიორიტეტულია, რომელს უფრო მეტი რაოდენობრივი რიცხვი აქვს, გაყიდულს თუ შესყიდულს? აი ეს კითხვა მქონდა მხოლოდ და მხოლოდ.
Actually, these two departments was totally separated for in Kalem agency, because as I mentioned before, Nermin was representing Turkish adult titles abroad, and we have another agent in Kalem agency who represent the Turkish children titles to abroad, and we as three agents are representing foreign titles in Turkish market. So. And we have another new agent who will assist Nermin. So we are 6 agents and totally separated from each other. But if we can talk about the money, Nermin always says that we are the one who makes the money, you know, from foreign titles to Turkish market, because it's not easy to sell the Turkish titles abroad, and the advance fees are not very high always. So it's separately different, and I don't think that one of them is so much more than the other. We all are working hard, and yeah, it's almost equal.
Okay. I just want to point out, I want to say thank you to each of the panelists. We're at the end of the panel now, and we don't want to have everything get too late. I just want to point out that everybody's going to be available. We're all here for the rest of the day, so if you have any questions that you weren't too shy to ask, maybe, feel free to ask everybody. Feel free to follow up. I just want to thank everybody in turn. Thank you for coming. I want to thank Vansa for inviting me. I'm going to share one very brief story, which will take about 15 seconds. Vansa has heard this story. I knew nothing about the Ukraine. I'm in America, or not the Ukraine, I'm sorry. I knew nothing about Georgia. I'm an American. I grew up not knowing, I thought Georgia was a state in the United States. My first experience encountering Georgia was at the Frankfurt Book Fair in 2008. And it's the most elegant protest I've ever seen in my life. This was shortly after Russia had attacked Georgia, and they were stuck next to each other at the Frankfurt Book Fair, a gigantic Russian booth and a small Georgian booth. And it was quite interesting, because what were they going to do with each other, these neighbors who had been fighting? The Georgians decided to protest by throwing paper airplanes at the Russian booth for 5 days straight. And the irony was they made the paper airplanes out of books they had taken off the Russian stand, tore them into paper airplanes, and just sat there very quietly throwing paper airplanes. I'll never forget that, and it touched my heart. Thank you for the invitation, and have a great conference.